Hi, everyone. Lauren Weber, HuffPost reporter from Washington, D.C. here. Emma and I work together each workday morning to produce HuffPost's Amazon Alexa morning briefing, which means that she makes me sound much better than I truly am each and every morning as I read off today's news. After she works her editing magic, people across the U.S. can ask their Amazon Alexa devices for the news and hear Emma's work and my voice in their homes, bringing them the rundown for the day.
Good afternoon, my name is Emma Victoria Holton and I am the founder and executive producer of podcast production company Art of Podcast. And as you can hear from my accent, we're based in Greater Manchester in the UK. And I'm absolutely delighted that Adobe have asked me here today to speak to you about how to put together a compelling story using Adobe Audition. And talking of content, I have a lot of content to get through today, so I won't be taking any questions from the floor, but anyone that would like to have a chat with me afterwards, I'll be taking questions to the side. So, before I get started into that, I thought it would be really interesting to share my own story and how a story idea of my own actually propelled me into the world of professional radio production. So going back to 2007, this is my band, Jesus Stole My Girlfriend. The reason why I'm called Jesus Stole My Girlfriend, that's a presentation for another time. But we did a live session on BBC Introducing, which is a local BBC station. And it was my very first experience of radio. And boy, did it have me hooked from the first moment. So I went and I did some work experience on that show. And subsequently, I did 2 years of volunteering on hospital radio, and I thought, this is a career I only want to follow. So I went back to university in 2009 to Bournemouth University to do a master's degree in radio production. There I am, rocking some incredible bangs there. And as part of the course, we had to actually pitch to a BBC Radio 4 commissioning editor. Now, for those of you that aren't aware of UK radio, BBC Radio 4 is the largest speech station in the UK, and it has massive international renown. So, for students like us, it was a massive deal. So we were told about this before going away back home for the Christmas break, and we had to have this amazing, perfect idea by the new year to pitch. And I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do, and I was freaking out about it. So I went home, and my dad had recently discovered YouTube, and he's a massive fan of the band The Who. And he was irritating my mum and I, playing all these music videos. And he said, Emma, come and look at this, come and look at this. I need to show you this. And Keith Moon, The Who were on tour in San Francisco at the Cow Palace, 1973. And Keith Moon was collapsed over the drum kit. He'd taken this cocktail of horse tranquilizers and brandy, like he liked to do, and he couldn't play. And Pete Townsend was so embarrassed. He called out to the crowd, is there anybody that can play drums? I mean, somebody good. And this kid got out of the crowd and filled in for Keith Moon. And he's looking there, just terrified, he's a 19-year-old kid. And I thought, you are my idea. So I wrote up this idea, and we went back in the new year, and we pitched to this lady here. This is Caroline Raphael, who was a commissioning editor at Radio 4 at the time. And she went around the tables, about 14 of us in my class, and she dissected every single idea and pretty much said, they're no good. So I'm there thinking, are you going to get to me and this is the end of my career before I've even started? But she got to my idea and she said, I had to actually look this up because I can't believe that we haven't commissioned it yet. This is a great idea. I was like, whoa, so what do I do now? So in the UK system, I can't just go to the BBC and say, hey, I've got this idea, let's make it. You've got to go through an approved independent production company. So for me leaving university, this idea was the ultimate currency to get that first gig. And they're a very rare thing to get, a radio job in the UK. So anyway, long story short, subsequently I got my first gig, and the idea sold, and it subsequently got commissioned and released. So this is me in my first radio gig. I got so much experience, so it's about 2.5 years. I got to live over in Ireland and work on a program there. I worked on loads of documentaries, and I worked on some music shows as well. I worked on the Radio 2 folk show. But this little voice in my head was saying, there's more to this for you as a producer. There's more that you can get your teeth into. And the money wasn't great either, to be honest. So as a side gig, I started producing podcasts for people based in the States. I could do my day job and then come home at night and do this stuff. So anyway, I started actually making more money producing podcasts than I did in my regular radio job. So in 2012, I quit my job and set up my own production company, and Art of Podcast was born. And our company mission is pretty simple. We aim to get to the heart of who people are and why they do what they do by telling compelling stories using podcasts and audio content. We're a team of 4, along with a bunch of freelancers too. So what is it that we do for our clients, and actually, who are our clients? As you saw in that video, I work with AOL and HuffPost, and we present the morning email on HuffPost, which goes out on Amazon Alexa Monday to Friday. We also work with the United Nations and Goldsmiths University in London. So what is it that we actually do? We do full service. So our clients, our corporate clients, so we've got Ernst & Young here, they don't want all the hassle of coming up with the idea or whatever. They just want to turn up to studio and just have a great time. So we help shape the idea, we help craft the scripts, we help do everything, and they just turn up and record, and we just do everything else. We also do client-originated content, which is where the client will maybe have an idea and we just go and record it. This is a music conference, and then we will put it all together in post for them. And then there's good old-fashioned post-production. So we have a few podcasters that we work with and a few other corporate clients that like to have their hands in the content space. And we also get to record in some pretty interesting locations. And when does this stuff go out? Well, like I said, Amazon Alexa, that's an area we are moving into very, very quickly, and other smart speakers, of course, as well as AOL and HuffPost. We also have a number of private clients that have things in production on that space. And of course, just good old RSS and podcasts. Anyway, enough of my story. What is it that makes content, audio content, so special? Audio is an intimate medium. That is, it literally gets in between that person's ears. You're literally in their mind. And that creates a one-to-one relationship. If you can think about the way you choose your language and you're referring to that person on a one-to-one basis, it creates that one-to-one special relationship, which leads to loyal fans. And if the aim is customers, loyal customers. Audio is also a passive medium. You can be doing other things, like this girl here, doing the washing. You've been going out walking a dog, you can go to the gym. It's not like video where it takes your time, you have it in front of you, you've got this barrier. So there's literally more audio hours than there are video viewing hours in the day. And therefore then, podcasts are listened to in full from start to finish. And that's pretty powerful, because usually a podcast is around, 30 minutes in length? And having someone's time, 30 minutes of someone's time when they're so busy, is a really powerful thing when you're trying to get your message out there. But always remember this, and this is to quote Steve Allen from The Tonight Show many years ago in the 30s. He was referring to radio in this context, but it really applies to all audio content. Audio is theatre of the mind, and it's your job as a producer to enhance that story. It's your job as a producer to drive that journey with your listener. Take them on that smooth journey from A to B. So how do you come up with that idea? And like I said, when I first started out, I got really stressed about coming up with ideas, and a lot of people struggle with this. First of all, I would say carry an ideas book, or anything, even if you just want to write it in your phone, whatever's easiest for you. And immerse yourself in different environments. Just going back to the Who's drummer idea, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I'd just gone to see my parents, and my dad had told me all about this story. So just going to a coffee shop or just going to different places and listening into what people are saying, it can really get the ideas flowing and bouncing. And then just don't complicate it. Think in themes, think in single words, and then just move from there. And another way you can do it, it's a kind of lazy way these days, but anniversaries. Is there something linked to an anniversary and something that you're passionate about that you could maybe tell? But most importantly, don't cling onto an idea. Just keep going. Okay, that idea, you're clinging onto it and it sucks. Just park it, move on, and then come back to it. You can always come back to it, but that idea that sucks is taking up a lot of your time and a lot of your creative energy. So how do you construct a story once you've got that amazing idea? It's all in the prep. So pre-interviewing your guests is absolutely essential before you go in and do that interview. Because not only does it help with that relationship and get the trust and iron out any questions they might have or any concerns or stresses, but also it allows you to pre-qualify them. It's not to put it too harshly, but make sure they're not boring. And I had this problem a few years ago. It was a quick turnaround, and there was a guy in the States that I'd sorted out via email. We'd booked out this studio via ISDN. It was very expensive, and he sounded so excited on email. And anyway, I got into the studio, faded up, and he sounded just like a robot. And we couldn't use the interview at all. So we had to go back to square one and start again. So learn from that lesson, pre-interview, because it could save you a lot of money. And once you've done those pre-interviews, you can draft a narrative. So you'll have an idea, you'll have a flavor for how things are going. So draft just a rough narrative, but be intentional when you go into those interviews. Don't be really rigid, and a lot of people will ask me, should I write down all the questions and send them to my guests? And I would say no. Don't do that, because they know what's coming next and it's kind of robotic, but just give them an overview of what you're going to be talking about. And then when you're in the interview, be prepared to pivot, because someone could throw you a massive curveball that is amazing, and you might want to go in that direction. So always think about that. So now you've done all your interviews, what do you do with all this amazing audio? So what you can do is, and what some people like to do, is transcribe the interviews. They will transcribe them, especially if someone is doing the editing after them, just so that then the editor knows what they need to take out. But for me personally, I like to do this. I go through and put markers in and then create snippets from there, because I like to hear the emotion. I like to hear where things are going. And then from there, I create a rough multi-track. So from that rough multi-track, how do you make that story flow when you've got all of these clips? And there's just a few tips here to bear in mind. Always remember that you are taking that listener on a seamless journey. Always bear that in mind. The story might wobble like this. You know, we're not trying to go linear and boring, but it still needs to, you need to drive the listener so they know where they're going next. So make sure it's always from A to B. And then ask yourself, does it actually make sense? Sometimes I will make a rough multi-track and play it to someone else, just so if it makes sense to them and they've never heard the story before, then we're going in the right direction. But most importantly, when you're putting this together, make sure that you tell the story slowly and keep your listener guessing. Because there's no point in telling that story 30 seconds, just an overview of what happens, because they're not going to want to follow on the next 27, 28, 29 minutes. So always add a few surprises along the way. And then once you've done that, just how do you bring that story to life? Just how do you add texture in the multi-track? So you can do that by adding presenter links. Now, presenter links are great, again, for telling the listener where they're going to be going to next. Or there might have been this really interesting interview, but they told the story in 25 minutes, and you need that in 5 minutes. So you could use presenter links just to really sum it up in just a matter of a couple of lines, so that's always good. And adding SFX is great, and wild track, which is a sense of place like this. So I recorded a field. So it's placing that listener in the area that you're talking about. And of course, adding music to really drive the emotion. So I wanted to give you a bit of a practical demo of all that stuff I've just been talking about. And this is a recent guest of mine. This is Rabia. I have a podcast in production at the moment called Human Podcast, which is looking at the human psyche and really diving deep into who we are and why we do what we do. Now, Rabia was faced with a very difficult decision many years ago. She's a British Pakistani Muslim, and she fell in love with a white Western man. And her family were very conservative, and she was very worried that when she told her parents they were planning to get married, and he was a secret, by the way, they didn't know this relationship was happening, she was really worried that they were going to extradite her from the family. So just in this short clip, this is Rabia retelling her story about telling her parents that they were getting married.
It was a real strange scenario of someone that I love sitting at the table with other people that I love. And if you were like looking through the patio window onto our dining table, you wouldn't think that this was a scenario where there was somebody around the table who was not part of that family. And as it was my birthday, I had presents, and it was all really, the meal was about me. And so the time came, we were sat on the sofa chatting, and then they started speaking about us, and we came out with it. Mum, Dad, we've got some news, and as we're speaking about us, you know, I'm happy to say that we're engaged. And I thought that was going to be the moment where the faces would drop and the mug would smash, or the disappointment would come. But my mum ran over with nothing but an embrace, and I was not expecting that reaction, and I could feel the relief of Alex sat next to me, just a huge relief that I had said it. And it was really important that it was me who said it and not him being my mouthpiece, because that's me saying I've chosen this person. And for you to be loved unconditionally by your parents despite your choices is a huge thing.
So there's Rabia there just telling you her story. I'm not sure if you could hear some of the SFX in there. I did raise them all up, hopefully, so you could hear them. They might be a bit loud, actually, for the people watching at home. So just going back into the session, just to show you how I constructed that. So I have actually already taken out the ums and ums of this particular clip. I didn't think you would really want to watch me doing that for 10 minutes, so I've streamlined it. So this is Rabia speaking without any stuff underneath.
It was a real strange scenario of someone that I love sitting at the table with other people that I love. And if you were like looking through the patio window onto our dining table.
So there she's talking about being sat at the dining table. And here it's really important to place your listener there. Imagine that they're sitting at this really important moment in her life, at this dining table on her birthday. So here I've added some SFX of the dining table. And unfortunately, all I could actually hear was some male voices in the SFX. So I've also added some female voices, because she speaks about her mum and sister being there. And also there's some SFX of her opening presents, which I'll just show you here. Also, you'll see the blue lines here. That's panning. So I've added some panning throughout this as well to really give it a 3D feel.
And as it was my birthday, I had presents, and it was all really the meal was about me. And so...
And you'll also see there that I have actually split up this waveform here to create some space, to create some silence. And again, this is so important in storytelling, that you add this silence to really add that anticipation of what's going to be coming next. So I've added that in there. And I decided not to put any SFX under this part of the story, just so you could really hear what she had to say. And then she starts talking about how she thought people might react. Crying, shouting, smashing things. So I've added those SFX under there. And again, like I said, I've been using some panning in there. So there's the male and the female crying, and they are literally going like that to give you that real feeling that you are in that moment.
And the mug would smash, or the disappointment would come.
Also, a really great tip for when you're talking about something that happened in the past, you can add reverb to make it a real dreamlike sort of state. So I'll just show you here what I've done. So, reverb. So this is one that I really like, medium concert hall. It just makes it sound quite spooky and a bit weird, but not pushing it too far. I was actually having a conversation with my partner, Tom, who's over there. He's a music producer, and he's obviously learned a lot of different things about reverb compared to me. And he said, well, you need to really reflect the room that they're in. But here, you're pushing the boundaries a bit. You're making it dreamlike. But I wouldn't push it too far. There's a preset in there, Martian Echo it's called, and that makes everything go crazy. But let me just play this so you can hear kind of the haunting spookiness of it. Yeah, that's enough of that. I don't want to start crying. So, yeah, so you can hear what that sounds like.
The mug would smash, or the disappointment would come. But my mum ran over with nothing but an embrace. And I was not expecting that reaction. And I could feel the relief of Alex sat next to me, just a huge relief that I had said it, and it was really important that it was me who said it. And
so there I chose to move into music to again give it that signpost that we're going into another part of the story. And I chose this music because it's unobtrusive, it drives the story and it's emotive, but it doesn't take away from the story that she's telling, because this story really speaks for itself. And obviously, this is only one section of this whole podcast, because obviously next I'll be bringing the music up and going into the next section. So it's a great way to move from one section to another. And so that's pretty it for how I put that idea together. As you can see, it's a simple setup. I personally am not a technical person. I'm a storyteller. And like I say, I let the stories speak for themselves. I just use this as a tool to tell the stories and really immerse the listener. So I hope you found that useful, and I hope that you found my own story useful, because it is my story, and everyone has a story to tell. And I honestly think, as a producer, it's your job to tell that story with the care and attention it deserves. So thank you very much. I'll be taking any questions from the side. Thank you.